Chapter 154. The Nine Wonders Separation Flower was a miraculous flower that could regenerate limbs. Apart from the head and internal organs, the rest of the body could rapidly regenerate. This was a divine medicine that even Xiantian lords would be envious of. If this flower was placed anywhere else, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. However, this was the Grand Xia dynasty's imperial city, where there were 330,000 imperial guards and Xiantian lords. No one dared to cause trouble here. In order to find this divine flower, Zhang's son had racked his brains. Fortunately, his hard work paid off and he was fortunate enough to obtain it. In the auction, the price soared rapidly, from 100,000 gold coins to over 300,000 silver coins. Moreover, the price was still rising. The main competitors were only 3 or 4 boxes. They raised the price by 10,000 without the slightest hesitation. 500,000. An indifferent female voice came from one of the boxes. In an instant, she raised the price by more than 100,000 and immediately suppressed the other boxes. Hearing this voice, Ning Chen frowned. He felt that it was somewhat familiar, but when he thought about it carefully, it was extremely unfamiliar. In the box where the Xiantian was bidding, a snow-white robe with a beautiful face without the slightest trace of emotion was Mu Qingxue. Mu Qingxue was a Xiantian. As long as she didn't want others to recognize her, no one could do it, not even Ning Chen. 550,000 taels. Another person from the private room joined in the bidding. This time, it was Ning Chen who made the bid. Mu Qingxue didn't speak again. She quietly stood in the box and looked in the opposite direction. Her eyes were as cold as ice. 600,000 taels. Another competitor appeared in the auction and made a bid. 700,000. A box that had been silent until now finally spoke. 700,000 was already a sky-high price. It was impossible for anyone to raise it. After the woman on the auction stage asked 3 times, Zhong Zhong struck the wooden hammer in her hand. Mingyu, we have money. Ning Chen smiled. Little Mingyu was confused. Lu Ruoxi also didn't understand. In the Marquis' mansion, there were very few people who knew about this matter. Not long after, the woman walked in and motioned for the maid to leave. Marquis, this is Blazing Sun iron and 690,000 in gold notes. Because you are our Qilin Pavilion's VIP, the Blazing Sun iron will be your starting bid of 10,000. As for the Nine Wonders Separation Flower, the Qilin Pavilion will make an exception this time. How can I accept that? Although Ning Chen said that he was embarrassed, his hands were not embarrassed at all. He smiled as he took the gold notes and the Blazing Sun iron. Qilin Pavilion's attitude was polite, so Ning Chen naturally wasn't stingy with his words. The two of them talked back and forth for a long time, until Mingyu and Lu Ruoxi were about to fall asleep. Only then did Ning Chen reluctantly bid farewell to the woman. The Nine Wonders Separation Flower was bought by someone, and the buyer was not hard to guess. In this world, not everyone could take out such an astronomical amount of gold. At the very least, Ning Chen, who was a martial marquis, could not do it. 2 days later, a letter was sent to Jiming Marquis mansion from the third prince. Ning Chen left the mansion alone. This time, he didn't bring anyone with him. He went to the Yanwu mansion alone. Xia Yanwu loved martial arts and was proficient in martial arts. He was the second prince to be conferred the title of king. His title was martial arts demonstration. The third prince rarely returned home. Usually, he would stay in the barracks. This time, he was invited to the residence. Ning Chen walks into the Yanwu palace. Inside the hall, there is only one person and one flower. The man was Xia Yanwu, and the flower was the parting lily. Jiming Marquis, it's time to make a decision, Xia Yanwu indifferently says. I only want to ask one thing. What kind of agreement did you reach with the Northern Meng military advisor? Ning Chen calmly asks. She helped me ascend the throne, and I promised her a path to safely withdraw the troops, Xia Yanwu honestly says. Ning Chen slightly squints his eyes, saying, Your Highness, have you ever thought that this might be Fan Linyue's scheme? As long as the Grand Xia is in my hands, I don't need to fear any schemes, Xia Yanwu proudly says. Your Highness is very confident, Ning Chen praises. Xia Yanwu is not willing to be entangled in this matter. He says sternly, Jiming Marquis, I have already shown enough sincerity. I hope you won't disappoint me. Ning Chen chuckles. He immediately stretches out 2 fingers and points to the heavens. I, Ning Chen, hereby swear that I will do my best to help the third prince ascend the throne. If I violate this oath, I will be burned by the heavens. The oath is witnessed by the morning sun. Once you enter the 9th rank, you will be closest to the heavens. How can you so easily swear an oath? Huh. Arrogant laughter comes from the main hall. In the blink of an eye, it spreads throughout the entire manor. The heavens have eyes, and oaths will be obeyed. This is something that all martial artists above the 9th rank know. This oath is more reliable than any guarantee. Today, the Jiming Marquis swears that the 10th prince is in great danger. One decision in exchange for a flower. This is a win-win situation. It also means that the chaotic battle between the 2 princes of the Grand Xia is about to come to an end. In the Lingyan pavilion, Su Fian's zither is no longer calm. The worst thing has happened. The 10th prince sat at the table, his brows slightly furrowed as he drank cup after cup of wine without stopping. Go ask Duke Xiyu. Perhaps there will be a turn for the better, Su Fian suggests. Xia Mingri gently nods, then stands up and leaves. On this day, Duke Xiyu leaves the manor and goes to the Grand Guardian's manor to discuss the selection for the throne. 4 hours later, Duke Jingwu also arrives. The 3 dukes gather and discuss until sunset before leaving. Duke Jingwu's point of view hasn't changed. He supports the 3rd prince. Duke Xiyu supports the 10th prince. But the Grand Guardian's point of view has changed. Duke Xiyu clearly says that the 3rd prince and Northern Meng's side are likely to have some secret relationship. Duke Jingwu doesn't believe that, believing it to be Northern Meng's scheme. The Grand Guardian doesn't say whether he believes it or not. He only says that the 10th prince is indeed more suitable. Of the 3 dukes, 2 of them support the 10th prince. This caused the originally one-sided situation to once again change. 2 days later, news comes from the Weiyang Palace that the Empress is also leaning towards the 10th prince's ascension. This is like a stone that raises 1,000 ripples. Even the Empress who hasn't expressed her opinion has spoken. Doesn't that mean that the selection for the throne will soon be decided? What's going on? Xia Yanwu is sitting on the main seat in an unremarkable courtyard next to the Yanwu Manor. Below him are all-powerful officials of the 3rd prince's side. There is the Divine Wind Battalion's commander Ming Chuan, as well as the commanders of the Swift Rain and Violet Lightning battalions. Adding on 7 powerful nobles, there are 10 of them. The 10 of them didn't say anything. They knew this question wasn't directed at them, but at the Jiming Marquis. It should be a rumor. I went to the palace today, but unfortunately the Empress said she wouldn't see me, said Ning Chen in confusion. Xia Yanwu frowned. He wants to ascend the throne in a proper way. But if he can't do it, he won't be stingy with other methods. Whether it's true or false, since even you can't enter the palace, it means there really is a problem with mother, said Xia Yanwu. Ning Chen was silent for a long time before he slowly said, I'll try again tomorrow. Xia Yanwu nodded. You have to be prepared for everything. Jiming Marquis, as a martial marquis, you have the authority to mobilize an army of 100,000. You must be prepared to mobilize soldiers at any time. Ning Chen was startled. Your Highness, please reconsider. Mobilizing soldiers without reason is the same as rebelling. Who says without reason? The 10th prince is plotting a rebellion. This prince is merely suppressing the rebellion. Xia Yanwu said coldly. Isn't it too rushed? Below him, one of the marquis asked worriedly. Another marquis shook his head. Your Highness' considerations are reasonable. Once the 3 dukes and the Empress really issue an edict to establish the 10th prince as the emperor, it will be too late. At that time, we won't have the right to do so. Even if we mobilize soldiers, we will have no chance of winning. Sigh. The rest of the Marquis sighed. If possible, no one would want to reach such a stage. The three imperial army commanders also frowned. After a while, Ming Chuan opened his mouth and said, "Your Highness, it's still not appropriate. Out of the 4 city gates, 2 are in the hands of the Empress and the first prince, 1 is in the hands of the 10th prince, and the last one is in the hands of the Marquis Nangong. Even if the army arrives, they will not be able to enter in a short period of time. This prince has already made arrangements." With that said, Xia Yanwu clapped his hands. In the next moment, a young figure walked in and bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, the Nangong Marquis establishment is ready for your Highness' orders." Seeing that, everyone's pupils constricted. That person, Nangong Qing. So, the Nangong Marquis had already sided with His Highness. Ning Chen sighed. The imperial army had 11 camps, and the third prince had 4 of them. If he did not see it with his own eyes, it would be hard to believe. Xia Yanwu's trump card had greatly exceeded his estimation. Everyone dispersed and left in the night. Ning Chen also returned to the Ji Mingho residence and went straight to his study room. On the second day, Ning Chen entered the palace again, but he was once again stopped in front of the heavenly mandate chamber. "Marquis, please do not make things difficult for this subordinate." An imperial army soldier revealed a difficult expression. "Why is the Empress not meeting me?" Ning Chen asked. The Empress did not say. She only said that if Marquis enters the palace, she will not meet you. The imperial army soldier said helplessly. "Esteemed Empress, Ning Chen requests an audience." Ning Chen took 2 steps back and shouted. His voice rumbled and shook the entire imperial palace. But in the deep heavenly mandate chamber, it was still calm and not a single sound came out. "Marquis, please go back." The imperial army soldier sighed. "Humph." Ning Chen flung his sleeve and left angrily. The news that Jiming Marquis was once again refused an audience by the Empress in front of the heavenly mandate chamber spread like wildfire. Everyone in the imperial court knew about Jiming Marquis' background. Even if he was not personally taught by the Empress, it was close. Now, Jiming Marquis could not even enter the heavenly mandate chamber. One could imagine how angry the Empress was. It seemed that the matter of Jiming Marquis taking a side had completely angered the Empress. However, this also made everyone see one thing clearly. It turned out that the Empress had in mind the Empress's choice of the Emperor was the 10th prince. It was understandable that Jiming Marquis stood on the 3rd prince's side for the 9 wonders flower. No one could say anything about it. Such an opportunity would only come once. If it was lost, it would never be found again. 2 days later, the 3 dukes and Zhang Sun met again in the heavenly mandate chamber. The 4 of them talked for an entire day, but no one knew the result. However, this time, Duke Jingwu sent a letter to the 3rd prince. The letter was very simple and only had 5 words. Teacher has done his best. Chapter 155. The manner of Jiming Marquis was as peaceful as usual. No matter what happened outside, it was always a peaceful place. Ning Chen did not allow any conspiracy to disturb the manor, especially the backyard. There was not much time left in the 1-month period given by Prince Yen. Fortunately, the chess pieces that needed to be set were almost all set, and it was time to finalize the game. This fight between the 2 kings was actually a farce. The one controlling it was Fan Lingyue, and the one watching the show was also Fan Lingyue. He was powerless to stop it, and could only use the smallest price to end it. It was still the same statement. Whoever became the emperor had nothing to do with him. "Marquis, Eunuch Pei has sent a letter." A low voice rang out from outside the study. "Send it in," Ning Chen said calmly. "Yes." As soon as he finished speaking, the letter turned into a streak of light and flew into the room. However, he didn't enter the room and continued to wait in front of the door. Ning Chen took the letter. After reading it, he said indifferently, "All right, you may leave." There's no need to keep an eye on eunuch Pei. Yes. The black shadow left and disappeared in the blink of an eye. It seemed like Duke Shiyu thought highly of him and would only be at ease if he died. The night was intoxicating. The lights in the study were still on, but the person had already disappeared. In the palace of the Great Xia dynasty, a black shadow entered under the cover of the night. The patrolling imperial guards passed by, but they did not notice anything unusual. In the Weiyang Palace, Qing Ning, who had rested after a tiring day, suddenly opened her eyes. She sat up and asked alertly, "Who is it?" "It's me," said Ning Chen. He entered in a flash and took off the ghost mask. "Why are you here at this time?" Qing Ning asked helplessly as she leaned against the bed in her thin pajamas and covered herself with the blanket. This brat really didn't know that men and women should keep their distance. How could he barge into a woman's room in the middle of the night? "I can't get in during the day," Ning Chen said honestly. "If there's something you need, go find Her Highness." "What are you here for?" Qing Ning said unhappily. "It's too late." "It's not convenient," Ning Chen said, embarrassed. Qing Ning felt like punching someone. After taking a few deep breaths, Qing Ning suppressed the impulse in her body and said, "Her ladyship has already done what you asked her to do. However, neither she nor I understand what you're planning. Why do you want to pretend that the 10th prince will ascend to the throne? This is not an illusion." Ning Chen's expression turned solemn as he spoke slowly. Qing Ning was stunned when she heard this. She did not know what was going on. "If I don't force the 10th prince into a corner, Duke Shiyu's side will remain silent. Only a silent dog bites." "I don't want to be bitten at the last moment," said Ning Chen calmly. "You're saying that Duke Shiyu isn't sincere in helping the 10th prince ascend the throne?" Qing Ning asked with a solemn expression. "I only suspected it before, but now I can confirm it," Ning Chen said seriously. "By the way, the 3rd prince already has the idea of using military force to force the abdication. He might take action very soon. This is rebellion." Qing Ning's expression changed, and she said angrily. Ning Chen smiled but didn't say anything. Since ancient times, the winner was king and the loser was always in the wrong. He wasn't surprised that the 3rd prince would choose this path. The 3rd prince's personality was one that liked to use small to gain big things. Moreover, this time, under the circumstances of a sudden attack, the success rate was much higher than expected. That's still not right. The 3rd prince doesn't have enough soldiers, and the 4 city gates aren't under his control. Even if you could mobilize soldiers, you wouldn't be able to enter. Qing Ning shook her head. "Marquis Nangong is one of his people." Ning Chen smiled. Qing Ning was shocked. How could this be? When the 3rd prince had been crowned king, Marquis Nangong had spoken out against it. It was no secret that the two of them didn't get along. No one would believe that Marquis Nangong was one of the 3rd prince's people. "I'm leaving. If the 3rd prince really wants to force the abdication, I'll send a letter in advance." With that, Ning Chen put on ghost face and got up to leave. "How did you obtain the 3rd prince's trust?" Qing Ning hurriedly asked. "Ha!" Ning Chen laughed calmly, and then his feet moved as he instantly vanished. Hearing this faint laugh, Qing Ning didn't know why, but an indescribable feeling of foreboding arose in her heart. The changes in the situation these days had caused everyone to place their attention on the Empress. However, the true source of this was the Grand Tutor's sudden change of heart. Everyone in the world thought that it was Duke Shiyu's silver tongue and the fabricated news of the 3rd prince colluding with Northern Meng. However, they didn't know that the true evidence had already been sent to the Grand Tutor. The Grand Tutor was just putting on a show. The crux of the entire matter was how Ning Chen obtained the 3rd prince's trust. If he didn't say anything, no one would know. Ning Chen returned to the Marquis residence and looked at the Marquis uniform that he hadn't worn since he was made a Marquis. The stone green robe was embroidered with 9 5-clawed pythons, symbolizing his noble status as an official. It was finally time to wear this court uniform. On the 2nd day, the 3rd prince sent a trusted aide to send a message, ordering him to go to Guming and Luaha cities outside the imperial city in 3 days to mobilize troops. These 2 cities were the imperial city's defense cities. The total number of troops there was only 100,000. They weren't far from the imperial city, so one night was enough. The Divine Wind, Swift Rain, and Violet Lightning battalions were as calm as before. However, deep within the eyes of the 3 battalions' commanders, there was much more worry. Forcing the 3rd prince to abdicate meant rebellion. It was a crime punishable by 9 familial exterminations. Although the plan seemed flawless, they couldn't help but worry. On the 4th day, Xia Zi ordered someone to deliver the ink sword. Ning Chen looked at the sword that had accompanied him through half a year of trials and hardships. He sighed in his heart. It had made it in time for this battle. On the 5th day, which was also the last day, Ning Chen went to see Xia Yanwu. Xia Yanwu was standing in front of the main hall of the prince's mansion. His eyes looked through the barrier in the direction of the imperial palace. His eyes flashed with passion and arrogance. Marquis Jiming, at dawn tomorrow, the dragon throne in the heavenly mandate palace will have a new master. Yes, it's time to end it, Ning Chen said with a sigh. Ning Chen left to mobilize troops in Guming and Luaha. At the same time, a beautiful figure in green walked out of Weiyang Palace and also left. 100 miles outside the city, the 2 met and then went south together. After seeing Ning Chen and the Marquis Jiming's commander's seal, the 2 city lords immediately knelt down to greet the Marquis Jiming. As the sun set in the west, the army set out and rushed towards the imperial city in the north. Ning Chen handed the commander's seal to Qing Ning. He glanced at the 3 generals in front of him intentionally or unintentionally. He didn't deliberately lower his voice and said slowly, "Take the commander's seal and stay here. If you find anything strange, kill them all without mercy." Yes, Qing Ning nodded in agreement. The 3 generals broke out in a cold sweat. This Jiming Marquis really was as vicious and merciless as the rumors said. In the next moment, Ning Chen's figure flashed and transformed into a streak of light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Within the imperial city, the divine wind was sent out. The entire city was terrified. The Swift Rain Battalion and the Violet Lightning Battalion also moved and quickly took control of the entire imperial city. The 4,000 soldiers of the Swift Rain Battalion surrounded the 10th Prince's estate, ready to attack at any moment. Outside King Haowu's estate, there were also soldiers of the Violet Lightning Battalion surrounding it. At this moment, all the people in the imperial city who held military power were unable to move a single step. They were all trapped within their mansions. Hearing the commotion outside, the gates of the imperial palace immediately closed and went into a defensive state. Within Weiyang Palace, an imperial guard captain blocked Zhang Xuan's path out of the palace, unwilling to give in at all. "Empress, please forgive us. The Marquis said that no accident can happen to your safety. He told me to stop you no matter what," said the imperial guard captain respectfully. This was the imperial guard captain who came back alive from the Buddha kingdom. After seeing the commander's seal of the dragon guard in Ning Chen's hand, he accepted this task without hesitation. In the world, if there was anyone who still completely trusted Ning Chen, it would be those soldiers who had witnessed the tragic battle of the Buddha kingdom. They were not surprised that the 3rd prince rebelled, but it was impossible for their marquis to do so. In front of the heavenly mandate palace, Ning Chen returned with his sword on his back and walked step by step to the top of the stone steps. The 9,000 dragon guards knelt down to the marquis and also to the supreme commander's seal of the dragon guard. There was a gap between the imperial guards. If the 30,000 dragon guards were the elite of the imperial guards, then the 9,000 soldiers in front of him were the elite of the elite. Ning Chen stood in front of the heavenly mandate palace and only said 2 words, "Hold your ground." Outside the first meridian gate, the tightly closed gates of the imperial palace blocked the path of the Divine Wind Battalion. The spies that were originally arranged did not move at all. Xia Yanwu's expression gradually became serious. He sensed that something was wrong. In the imperial city, the 10th prince, who was supposed to be in his residence, appeared unexpectedly and led the Blue Sparrow and White Tiger battalions to surround the Swift Rain battalion. On the other side, Xia Zi appeared and led the 2 battalions in his hands to surround the Purple Lightning battalion. Sensing that something was wrong, Marquis Nangong wanted to lead his troops to help but was blocked by Duke Xiu and Eunuch Pei. The red-robed, blue-robed, and red-robed guards of the Taisher Council all walked out and stood behind Duke Xiu. There were nearly 10,000 of them. The Taisher Council was still the Taisher Council of Duke Xiu. The head of the eunuchs still had absolute control. Marquis Nangong was in a difficult position and did not dare to act rashly. He was not afraid of the tricolor guards of the Taisher Council, but he was afraid of the old man beside the Taisher Council. The rebellion in the imperial city was quickly brought under control. Bad news reached Xia Yanwu's ears one by one, causing the 3rd prince of the Great Xia to look more and more unsightly. If he still did not know that he had been schemed against, he would be a fool. But who was the one who betrayed him? Figures flashed through Xia Yanwu's mind, but when it came to Ning Chen, he paused. After thinking about it, he shook his head. It couldn't have been him. The night wind was somewhat chilly. Xia Yanwu glanced to the south and sternly said, "Hold on. As long as we wait for the army to arrive, we will still have a chance." "You won't have a chance." Xia Zi, dressed in purple, strode forward, his black hair blowing in the wind. The autumn water sword in his hand was dripping with blood. The 3 generals followed closely behind him, not daring to overstep. "Surround the Divine Wind Battalion. Kill anyone who resists." "Yes." The order soared into the sky. The 20,000 dragon guards and 30,000 Xuanwu army soldiers that had been waiting for this moment moved out, their banners flying as they surrounded the Divine Wind Battalion. Rumble. The gates opened at noon, and 9,000 of the most elite dragon guards appeared. The person at the very front wore a blue, 9-python marquee robe that flapped in the wind. Chapter 156. When Xia Yanwu saw Ning Chen, he calmed down after a brief moment of shock. He didn't feel any fear or panic, only insufferably arrogance. "Jiming Marquis, I really didn't expect it to be you." "It's not strange," said Ning Chen. Xia Yanwu glanced at the horizon. "It's almost daybreak. Having someone to accompany me to hell isn't a bad thing. You go first. If you're not in a rush, you can wait for me," said Ning Chen. "Of course, I'll wait." Xia Yanwu laughed. No one present understood what the 2 of them were talking about, including Xia Zi. Perhaps going to hell together was the best ending for the 2 of them. "I'll leave this place to you," said Ning Chen. "Yes." Xia Zi nodded. Ning Chen left, leaving the final battlefield to the 2 princes. After Ning Chen left, Xia Zi looked at Xia Yanwu, who was still as arrogant as ever. A trace of sadness flashed through his eyes. "Yanwu, you've gone the wrong way. Being born in this cruel imperial palace is a mistake. If I don't fight, I'll die. The most heartless thing is the imperial family. The winner takes all." "That has never changed," said Xia Yanwu. "Did you really have some secret contact with Beimeng?" asked Xia Zi, suppressing his emotions. "Yes." Xia Yanwu nodded. At this point, there was nothing to hide. Hearing Xia Yanwu personally admit it, Xia Zi's expression turned cold. Killing intent appeared on his face. "As a prince of the Grand Xia, are you worthy of the hundreds of thousands of soldiers and Duke Jingwu's trust? Why bother with trifles when it comes to accomplishing great things? However, there's no point in saying anything now. Let's fight." Xia Yanwu took a step forward, his golden armor clanging. Although he had already lost, he wasn't someone who would give up easily. Even if he died, he would die in battle. Xia Zi slowly raised his sword and sighed. "Among us 4 brothers, 10th brother is the best at enduring. 8th brother is good at reading people's hearts. As for 3rd brother, your martial strength is ranked first. Today will be the last time I'll fight with you." Xia Zi unsheathed his sword. His purple robes fluttered in the wind. Xia Zi did not use any extreme moves, nor did he release any shocking aura. However, the heavens and earth seemed to have sensed it and trembled. Xia Yanwu's expression did not change. His aura rose as he took a step forward. His golden armor clanged as his iron fists met the autumn water sword head-on. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions as the autumn water sword vibrated. Xia Yanwu did not retreat even half a step. He let out a light shout and activated his martial arts. The heavy and vigorous aura on his iron fist pressed down as he ruthlessly punched toward Xia Zi. Not bad. Xia Zi narrowed his eyes and loosened his grip. His sword spun around and turned into a beam of light that descended from the sky. The sword light flourished and pierced through Xia Yanwu's head. Boom! The ground between the two of them was unable to withstand the immense force, and it cracked open. Dust and sand flew into the air, and cracks spread out for hundreds of feet. At the same time, the sword came down. Xia Yanwu wanted to dodge, but he found that his right fist was restrained and he could not move. Moving the mountains and rivers. At this critical moment, Xia Yanwu did not panic at all. He flipped his other hand and gathered his qi, sending out a red wave that pushed Xia Zi back a couple of steps. Above him, the autumn water sword was also sent flying by this shocking aura. The life and death crisis disappeared in an instant. Xia Yanwu, you really have fallen. Xia Zi took half a step back and softly said. The Grand Xia's prince had actually cultivated the technique of Northern Meng's lover. How lamentable. Xia Zi didn't know whether it was hatred or disappointment, but a trace of loneliness flashed through his eyes. Was it worth it for the position of emperor? Big brother, do you know what I hate the most about you? It's your hypocritical attitude and expression. Xia Yanwu revealed a mocking expression. There's no need to lecture me. Since I've already taken this step, I'm already mentally prepared. Today, life and death will be decided by the heavens. Xia Yanwu no longer held back since he had already probed Xia Zi. He exerted force with his foot, causing the stone floor to shatter. A tyrannical aura suddenly soared, and a scarlet light reflected off his golden armor. Sighing, Xia Zi put away the last of his sorrow and softness. He clenched his fist, and the autumn water sword flew back. His black hair fluttered behind him, and a boundless righteous aura surged out. The golden scroll opened behind him, and the large golden words blossomed with a dazzling light. This was the Confucian school's secret art, boundless sea of learning. Ancient gods' martial arts demonstration. Xia Yanwu's fists trembled as he stomped his foot. Immediately, an ancient aura surged out, and a huge statue appeared. It had a green face and fangs, and it looked ferocious. The moment it appeared, a berserk pressure surged out, causing space to shatter and the entire world to violently tremble. Outside the battle, the three generals felt the boundless evil aura that suddenly appeared, and they were shocked. They looked at the first prince with deep worry. The soldiers who were further away didn't know what was happening, but they could still feel the terrifying pressure coming from the front. A battle of this level wasn't something they could handle. Boundless sea of learning versus ancient gods martial arts demonstration. After a loud explosion, both sides were pushed back. Although they were on par with each other in terms of moves, it couldn't hide the difference in their foundations. Oh Hong, who was mentioned by Xia Yanwu, was pushed back dozens of steps before stabilizing herself. On the other side, Xia Zi's aura was slightly chaotic, but he didn't seem to be injured. After taking 3 steps back, he slashed apart the aftershock with his sword and refused to take another step back. Half-step Xiantian. Xia Yanwu's expression greatly changed. This was the first time he was shocked since the start of the battle. The 4 kings all had their own strengths. Although the first prince was extraordinary in every aspect, he didn't stand out in any particular aspect. Gradually, everyone began to acknowledge him. They were used to it and no longer doubted him. That was because Xia Zi's performance was already very outstanding. We really were too stupid. Xia Yanwu faced the sky and laughed. Blood flowed down his armor. He was unwilling. His battle intent soared like a raging tide. So what if he was a half-step Xiantian? This was his final battle. Xia Yanwu let out a wild roar and pushed his cultivation to its peak. The surrounding stone slabs floated up, and he was like a burning furnace that rose into the air, emitting a dazzling light. Jingwu Dong Yao. With an unshakable battle intent, Xia Yanwu condensed his entire life's cultivation into his strongest move. His martial arts demonstration light surged and surged, illuminating the entire imperial palace. This final move was still the move that Jingwu Duke had taught him. Perhaps in Yanwu King's heart, he had always maintained the most primitive respect for his teacher. Facing Jingwu Duke's famous move, Xia Zi raised the sword in his hand. The sword moved and starlight gathered. Immediately, his cultivation broke through the limits and faintly emitted a Xiantian aura. Starry Sky Crossing. Using the same move as the three dukes, the two princes of the Grand Xia finally chose the best way to resolve their grudges. Originally, the two of them had taken the same master. Although they had different masters, they were both disciples of the three dukes. Since they were young, they had secretly competed against each other. At this moment, in a life-or-death situation, the two of them both chose the move taught by the three dukes. It seemed they wanted to use this to resolve their many years of conflict and grudges. Boom! 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 A terrifying sound rang out and the world lost its color. One could only see space explode and a figure flew out, smashing into the ground. His body was covered in blood and even his armor was shattered. PFFF. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Xia Yanwu knelt down on one knee. Blood flowed down from his body. He tried to stand up several times but failed. His heavily injured body could no longer support his inextinguishable battle intent. You've lost. Xia Zi slowly walked over and indifferently said to Xia Yanwu. Xia Yanwu bitterly smiled. In the end, he had still underestimated his big brother. So the strongest person under the Xiantian realm wasn't the Jiming Marquis, but Xia Zi. Make your move. Closing his eyes, Xia Yanwu's face didn't show any fear. The winner was king while the loser was a bandit. He had already mentally prepared himself. Time slowly passed, but the expected sword still didn't stab down. Xia Yanwu opened his eyes and looked at his imperial brother. His heart fiercely trembled. In the blink of an eye, his black hair was covered in frost, but the hand holding the sword still didn't stab down. Xia Zi's face was still very calm, without the slightest ripple. Only the strands of hair that were gradually turning white highlighted the sorrow and struggle in his heart. The night wind blew, causing a wisp of white hair to flutter. It was so dazzling that blood dripped down from the corner of Xia Zi's mouth. His cultivation actually became a bit unstable. You can leave. From now on, the Grand Xia will no longer have a Yanwu king. Xia Zi's hand that was holding the sword fell down. In the end, he still couldn't do it. He sighed inwardly and turned around, unwilling to face Xia Yanwu again. First Prince, you've disappointed the department head. At this moment, two hidden figures appeared from the Dragon Guard army. They were glistening with a bloody light and a white light as they simultaneously slashed down. Xia Zi's expression shook. He used his palm to disperse the white light while simultaneously using his body to block in front of Xia Yanwu. He circulated his cultivation to block the bloody sword light. Bang! A terrifying shockwave erupted. Xia Zi was unwilling to retreat. Despite the blood flowing from his mouth, he still stood firm. No matter how wrong he is, he's still my brother. I'll take responsibility for his mistakes. Xia Zi stood in front of Xia Yanwu, unwilling to move even half a step. The department head wants me to ask you if you can take responsibility for it. Yin Wugo's eyes turned cold. Xia Zi was silent, unable to answer this question. The department head has ordered that if your highness can't do it, then we'll do it. Today, the third prince must die. Yin Wugo and Kong Yu's figures moved once more. Their swords shone brightly as they joined hands to take Yenwu King's life. Xia Zi blocked them while Autumn Water blocked their swords. For a moment, they were in a deadlock. At this moment, a shocking arrow light suddenly descended. Its terrifying might was something that even the heavens and earth couldn't stop. You can't. Facing this terrifying arrow light, Xia Zi was aghast. He didn't have time to hesitate. His cultivation sword and a golden pillar of light sword. At this moment, the Grand Xia's vast martial king finally revealed his shocking strength without holding back and forcibly broke through to the Xiantian realm. A generation's heavenly genius. Yin Wugo and Kong Yu were shocked. But the moment they split up, it was already too late to withdraw their attacks. Breaking through to the Xiantian realm allowed Xia Zi to break free from their entanglement and once more stand in front of Xia Yenwu. When the arrow light arrived, the golden pillar of light dissipated. The ground beneath Xia Zi's feet caved in. Blood wildly gushed out, but he was still unwilling to retreat. Yenwu, I'll always remember that you are my brother. Xia Zi's back was facing Xia Yenwu. He allowed the blood to dye his clothes red as he softly said, "It's just that you've walked the wrong path and done the wrong thing. However, your big brother will bear the consequences for you." After the arrow light, 2 more sword lights arrived. If he couldn't withdraw them in time, it would become a regret. Xia Yenwu's heart trembled. Tears fell from his eyes like rain. But his body was about to be seriously injured and he was powerless to do anything. At this moment, he came to a standstill. Scenes of the past constantly appeared in his mind. Being born in the imperial palace, the person he saw the most was neither his father nor his mother. Instead, he saw his brothers who had grown up with him. Ever since he was a child, Xia Zi had always been like a little adult protecting them. Every time he was punished by his father, it was always Xia Zi who would speak up for them and plead for leniency for them. Big brother. After calling out one last time, Xia Yenwu no longer hesitated and slapped his Qi Si. Ha! His Qi Si exploded and his body was instantly filled with energy. His heavy injuries were temporarily suppressed. With a clear whistle, Xia Yenwu's figure flickered and arrived between Xia Zi and Tai Li. He turned his head and faintly smiled before exploding. Blood and flesh splattered all over the sky. Yenwu. The shockwave from the explosion blocked the 2 sword lights. The shocking power sent the 3 of them flying dozens of meters away. Xia Zi looked at the blood and bones that filled the sky. His heart trembled and tears silently fell. Pft! Blood sprayed out and dyed the ground red. Xia Zi faced the sky and laughed wildly, tears falling like rain. Chapter 157. The third prince lost. He lost completely. He lost tragically. He lost so badly that he couldn't even compare to the flesh and blood that was falling from the sky. The conspiracy and the supreme throne disappeared overnight. Xia Zi's mouth was stained with blood. He smiled sadly with tears in his eyes. In the night wind, his white hair was faintly visible. How many innocents were involved in the struggle for the throne? How many soldiers were killed? Now that he thought about it, it was just a bubble. Yin Wugo and Kong Yu left. Yenwu Wang self-destructed. This was the best ending. The rebellion in the imperial city was quickly suppressed. Xia Yenwu, who spent his whole life fighting for the throne, couldn't even enter the palace. It was really ironic. Ah! At this moment, miserable screams sounded in the imperial city. Bei Meng borrowed the third prince's wings and the martial artists hidden in the imperial city began to move. The nobles on the side of the 10th prince and Duke Xiu began to be assassinated one after another. Even the commanders of the Blue Sparrow Battalion and the White Tiger Battalion were caught off guard by the sudden sneak attack. 3 died and 2 were injured. Ning Chen stood on top of the pagoda in the imperial city. Hearing the screams, he took out the Death Destroyer bow and shot an arrow. The bright silver arrow pierced through the sky and reached the courtyard of the Marquis of Shaoi. The expressions of the Bei Meng experts who didn't have time to retreat changed. When they saw the arrow, it had already pierced through their chests. Blood spurted out, splashing more than 10 feet high. Their eyes were wide open. They died with grievances. The silver arrow came one after another. Every time it appeared, it would take away the life of an assassin. However, from the fourth arrow, Ning Chen's mouth began to bleed. Drop by drop, the clothes on his chest were dyed red. Swoosh! Suddenly, an extremely fast white rainbow streaked across the sky. A shocking sword slashed towards the pagoda. With a loud bang, the pagoda collapsed. Ning Chen, who was already prepared, dodged the sword. However, he was still knocked back more than 20 feet. His blood splattered on the ground. Mu Qingxue. Ning Chen looked at the elegant and beautiful figure in the sky, and after a short moment of shock, he quickly returned to normal. Mu Qingxue didn't intend to use the second sword. His figure flashed and disappeared. Ming Yu was taken away. She didn't even have time to say goodbye. In the imperial city, as long as Prince Yan didn't make a move, no one could stop Mu Qingxue, who cultivated the travel scroll. Unfortunately, the Yan prince would not interfere in these matters. Ning Chen coughed twice. He took one last look at the direction that the two of them had disappeared in. Soon after, he withdrew his mind and walked towards the direction of the Lingyan pavilion. Tonight, he must settle all his troubles at once. Under the night sky, the man covered in blood walked forward step by step, coughing up blood from time to time. It was obvious that he was nearing the end of his life. The life scroll was a mental cultivation method that paid the most attention to one's foundation. Even so, it couldn't withstand the wear and tear of repeated life and death battles. Ever since he returned from the Buddhist kingdom, Ning Chen's body hadn't been well. He had relied on his peerless foundation and the power of elixirs to survive until now. There was a limit to a person's strength. This was all he could do. As for the outcome, it was up to the will of the heavens. He had never believed in the heavens, but in the end, it was still the heavens above his head that wanted to take him away. Secretary. Yin Wugo and Kong Yu rushed over. When they saw Ning Chen covered in blood, they were shocked and immediately went forward. You don't have to follow me. Just do what I told you to do. Ning Chen's footsteps didn't stop, and he coughed as he spoke calmly. Yes. A hint of hesitation flashed in their eyes, but they still nodded in agreement. In the Tylee department, there were 13 red-clothed people, 600 green-clothed people, and 8,000 blue-clothed people. Ning Chen had been the secretary for a month. It wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. The Tylee department was still the Tylee department of Duke Xiyu, but there was always the shadow of the Marquis of Jiming. No one could completely control these nearly 10,000 people, not even Duke Xiyu. In the heavenly mandate hall of the imperial palace, the 3 dukes and the 10th prince had arrived. The officials of the imperial court also rushed over one after another. Due to the turmoil in the imperial city and the assassins from northern Meng, many important officials had died. In addition, most of the rebellious officials on the 3rd prince's side had been arrested. Now, there were only a few people left in the heavenly mandate hall, less than 30% of the usual number. Old eunuch Pei walked to the side of the dragon throne. Looking at the empty dragon throne, his old eyes were gloomy. The officials didn't say anything about old eunuch Pei's actions. He was a genuine Xiantian expert, and no one could afford to offend him. Grand Secretary, it's time to announce the decision of the 3 dukes, a white-haired old official walked out and said in a trembling voice. After the old official spoke, the other officials turned their gazes toward the Grand Advisor. Tonight's upheaval had come so suddenly. So many people had died and so much blood had been shed. Not only were the people of the royal palace terrified, but even the officials in court were uneasy. The current Great Xia needed a new emperor to stabilize the hearts of the people. There was no suspense about the choice of the new emperor. The third prince had died, the first prince had withdrawn from the competition for a long time, and the other princes weren't capable. The only candidate for the throne was the 10th prince. Duke Jingwu remained silent. From the moment Xia Yanwu mobilized his troops, he hadn't said a word. Duke Xiyu was also very quiet. He waved his feather fan and didn't say a word. The Grand Secretary was waiting. He wanted to wait for the Marquis of Jiming to come and witness this final moment. Unfortunately, he didn't come. The greatest contributor still hadn't appeared. The Grand Secretary had no choice but to give up waiting and announce the decision of the three dukes. The officials knelt down to listen to the edict. When they heard the words Xia Mingtian at the end of the decision, they all heaved a sigh of relief. It was finally over. From the beginning, when the four dukes were fighting for the throne, to tonight's rebellion by the third prince, this battle for the throne had finally come to an end. The 10th prince's mouth curved in a smile. Under everyone's gaze, he walked step by step towards the throne. Imperial City, Lingyan Pavilion. Ning Chen had also arrived. His body was covered in blood and his tired eyes were filled with killing intent. When Su Fian and Qiu Lan saw Ning Chen, they were startled. They didn't understand what was going on. Jiming Marquis, why have you come? Su Fian felt that the atmosphere wasn't right. To kill. Ning Chen replied. As soon as he said this, the snow began to fall. His ink sword slashed across the sky. 5 months of flying snow. Qiu Lan pulled out her sword to block, but was directly sent flying. The difference in foundation and cultivation was too great. She was completely unable to participate in the battle. This time, Ning Chen didn't hide his moves like last time. He immediately used his killing intent. The power was completely different. Su Fian saw that the situation wasn't right. The 3 strings of the spring lightning in her hands moved together. A purple light instantly lit up. When the 2 swords collided, Su Fian retreated 3 steps. She was slightly at a disadvantage. Jiming Marquis, what is the meaning of this? Su Fian's face was filled with anger. Tonight, everything had gone according to plan. The third prince had raised an army and then was suppressed by the 3 dukes, the 10th prince, and the first prince. Now it was almost time to announce the 10th prince's ascension. Why was the Jiming Marquis here? The Heshi dynasty has already been destroyed for 1,000 years. They shouldn't be stirring up trouble again, Ning Chen said calmly. Su Fian's expression changed. How did he know? The Heavenly Mandate Palace should also have a result. Duke Xiyu is finished. Ning Chen glanced at the palace in the distance. Hearing this, Su Fian's heart sank to the bottom. She moved her feet and was about to rush over. Ning Chen held his sword and a sword light flashed, blocking her path. He said, even if you rush over now, it will be too late. Tonight, everything will end. In the Heavenly Mandate Palace, the 10th prince walked step by step to the throne of the Xia dynasty. He immediately turned around and slowly sat down. The officials bowed and the sound of "Long Live" echoed throughout the Heavenly Mandate Palace. Everyone, rise. Xia Mingri opened his mouth and spoke for the first time since he became the emperor. Thank. Before he could finish, Eunuch Pei, who was beside the dragon throne, sighed softly. Wrong. The word wrong was so sudden that no one could react. They saw that the hand that had once sheltered Emperor Xia from the wind and rain was imprinted on the 10th prince's chest with a bang. Blood spurted out. The sudden change shocked everyone, including the 3 dukes below. The next moment, everyone came back to their senses. However, an even more shocking scene occurred. The 10th prince, who was sitting on the dragon throne, his bones and face rapidly changed. In the blink of an eye, he returned to his original appearance. Xiyu. The expression of the Grand Advisor, Duke Jingwu, changed drastically in shock. That day, the plan was finalized. The 10th prince and Ning Chen met and decided on the final match of the day. What do you want to say first? Ning Chen asked. Announce that the Jiming Marquis has an audience, Xia Mingri said with a smile. Ning Chen nodded and remembered this sentence. There were only 3 people in the world who knew this sentence: Ning Chen, Xia Mingri, and Eunuch Pei. Duke Xiyu was a very careful person. Her actions were watertight. Ning Chen and Xia Mingri could not find anything that could be used against her. However, no matter how cunning Duke Xiyu was, her ultimate goal could not escape from the throne. Ning Chen had set up tonight's game to push the 10th prince onto the throne in order to lure out the mastermind behind the scenes. He did not need to think too much. It was enough to keep an eye on the dragon throne. Eunuch Pei was the key to this plan. At this last moment, only Eunuch Pei standing beside the dragon throne would not arouse any suspicion. Eunuch Pei had been in this position for 20 years. No matter when he returned, no one would dare to have any objections. The 2 princes did not have Xiantian masters. It was not the first time they had asked Eunuch Pei to come out of the mausoleum. Unfortunately, they had all failed. At this time, Ning Chen went to the imperial mausoleum and returned with minor injuries. This reminded many people in the imperial city. The Marquis Jiming's strength was not much weaker than Xiantian masters. Later, Eunuch Pei was secretly asked to come out, but no one knew who he was. Of course, Ning Chen was an exception. This was because when he was in the stone chamber, he had already told Eunuch Pei to ignore the invitations of other people except for the 10th prince and Duke Xiyu. The game of the past was the result of today's game. The person on the throne said the wrong thing and lost the whole game. Even someone as strong as Duke Xiyu could not resist the full power of an Xiantian master's palm. The Xiantian True Qi destroyed her meridians instantly. A pool of blood stained the dragon robe on her chest. Beside Duke Jingwu, Yin Maxiao, who had always been using the appearance of Duke Xiyu, was the first to recover. He stomped his feet and rushed out of the heavenly mandate palace. He reacted quickly without hesitation. He did not even look at the figure on the dragon throne. No one cared whether he was ruthless or decisive. The moment he turned around, no one cared. At this moment, the last glimmer of hope appeared in Duke Xiyu's dim eyes. She used up her remaining strength and shouted, "Take the princess away." Chapter 158. Eunuch Pei did not chase after her. Instead, he grabbed Duke Xiyu and threw her to the ground. In his eyes, as long as she was not of Emperor Xia's bloodline, no one had the right to sit on this seat. The Grand Advisor reacted and quickly walked to Duke Xiyu. After checking, he found that she had already lost her breath. The Grand Advisor felt pain in his heart. They had been in the same hall for 40 years, but he did not expect that today would happen. "I will go save the 10th prince." Duke Jingwu turned and left, unwilling to stay here any longer. The officials were at a loss, not knowing if they should leave or stay. Eunuch Pei stood beside the dragon throne, waiting for Ning Chen to come and fulfill his promise. In the Lingyan pavilion, purple thunder roared. Su Fian raised her hand and plucked the 4 strings, causing the stone floor to crack. Once again, the spring thunder's peerless power appeared. For strings cry, purple thunder frightens the gods. The roaring thunder roared and destroyed everything in its path, dyeing half of the sky purple. However, facing Ning Chen, who was stronger, the purple thunder dissipated in the sky. The ink sword condensed into frost, and the world seemed to have died. "Miss, run!" Qiu Lan risked her heavily injured body to block Ning Chen. At the same time, 3 ninth ranks appeared in the Lingyan pavilion, blocking Ning Chen's path. "Do you think you can escape?" Ning Chen moved, sending 4 people flying with one palm. His sword was merciless as it swept forward. Qi, the ink sword, pierced through the body, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The 4th ninth rank appeared and blocked the sword for Su Fian. Looking back one last time, he had no regrets. "Princess, run!" Blood flowed from his chest. Even someone as strong as a 9th rank was so weak at this moment. After a short pause, the other 3 ninth ranks stepped forward again, disregarding their lives to fight for a chance of survival for their princess. Tears flashed in Su Fian's eyes. She took a step forward and turned to leave. Ning Chen snorted coldly and activated his martial arts. Frost surged, and his sword shook off the three people in front of him. The gap between them was as strong as the distance. The three could not block the final dazzling light of the Marquis. They flew back with blood and crashed onto the ground. The broken death bow was drawn, and a silver arrow shone between heaven and earth. A moment later, it broke through the air. Su Feiyan's body trembled. She could feel the killing intent behind her back, but it was already too late to dodge. At this moment, a powerful palm energy swept over and collided with the arrow with a loud bang, forcefully shifting the arrow's trajectory to the right by 3 inches. In the next moment, the arrow pierced through his shoulder, bringing with it a bright flower of blood. Go! Yin Ma Xiao grabbed the injured Su Fian. His figure flashed and he quickly left. Ning Chen was just about to give chase when he suddenly staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood, and his breathing became chaotic. Secretary! Kong Yu rushed over and supported the former, a worried expression on his face. Have you found the 10th prince? Ning Chen steadied himself and asked tiredly. We found it. It's in a secret room in Duke Shiyu's residence. There are 2 rank 9 Deathsworn guarding it. By the time this subordinate and Yin Wugo arrived, the 2 Deathsworn were already dead, Kong Yu replied. Ning Chen nodded his head. The 10th prince's efforts to conceal his strength for so long had not been in vain. Although Xia Mingri's talent in martial arts was not as outstanding as the first prince's, he was not weak either. These princes of the great Xia dynasty were truly blessed by the heavens. It's all over. Let's go back. Ning Chen looked at the sky and sighed. Yes, Kong Yu respectfully accepted the order and immediately left. Ning Chen walked alone on the streets, step by step, towards the direction of the imperial palace. Now, it was time for him to fulfill his promise. The imperial palace was brightly lit. This was a sleepless night. Every palace was as bright as day, and the atmosphere was abnormally solemn. In front of the heavenly mandate palace, the dragon guards lined up from the bottom of the stairs all the way to the first meridian gate. On the dragon throne, Xia Mingri looked out of the palace with a lonely expression. After removing his disguise, he lost some of his weakness and became more steady. The officials were still in the dark and did not know what was going to happen. They all looked out of the palace, not understanding what was going on. They're here. Beside the dragon throne, Eunuch Pei, who had been holding his breath, had a threatening look in his eyes. His withered body instantly disappeared and he appeared in front of the heavenly mandate palace. Tap tap. In the distance, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Each step was steady as he slowly walked over. His blood-stained clothes fluttered in the wind, piercing one's heart. Welcome, Marquis. The leader of the dragon guards knelt on the ground and lowered his head. Welcome, Marquis. Along the way, all the imperial guards knelt down and bowed respectfully. Outside the Weiyang Palace, the leader of the imperial guards, who was responsible for the safety of Zhongsun, also knelt down after hearing the deafening sound. He faced the heavenly mandate palace and lowered his head. Zhongsun was shocked. Immediately, an extremely ominous premonition arose in her heart. Without another word, she wanted to rush out. Your Highness, the Marquis has ordered that you cannot leave the Weiyang Palace before dawn. The leader of the imperial guards stood in front of Zhongsun with his arms, unwilling to retreat even half a step. You are rebelling. Zhongsun was furious and shouted harshly. The leader of the imperial guard's expression did not change. He said, Your Highness, please calm down. After dawn, I will ask for punishment. You can punish me as you wish. You! Zhongsun was so angry that she could not speak. However, Qing Ning was not by her side, so she could not do anything. In the heavenly mandate palace, Eunuch Pei stood quietly on the 1,000-story stone steps. Looking at the young figure below, a rare look of appreciation flashed in his old eyes. Ning Chen was still in his clean white robes. He had taken off his marquis robes, which meant that this battle was the fairest. It had nothing to do with identity, only life and death. Do you have any unfulfilled wishes? Eunuch Pei asked calmly. I wish for the world to be at peace and no more wars, Ningchen replied with a faint smile. Eunuch Pei did not say anything. He could not fulfill this wish. 10th Prince, I hope you can be a good emperor, Ningchen glanced at the figure on the dragon throne and said lightly. I will. Xia Mingri nodded seriously and promised. Ningchen looked up to the east and sighed softly. There is not much time. Eunuch Pei, let's set the limit at dawn. Yes. Eunuch Pei agreed. This was enough. At this time, everyone had already seen what was going on. They were all shocked. Your Majesty. The Grand Advisor's expression flashed with uneasiness as he knelt down. No need to say more. It is useless, Xia Mingri sighed and shook his head. We can ask for the Empress, the Grand Advisor said anxiously. There are many dragon guards in front of the Weiyang Palace. Without the commander's seal, no one can enter, Xia Mingri said helplessly. As soon as he finished speaking, the battle in front of the Heavenly Mandate Palace finally began. The acquired stage against the Xiantian stage. Originally, there was no suspense in the battle. However, Ningchen did not hold back and used all his strength to fight. With 2 scrolls and the unique martial arts of the Zhongsun family, his power was amazing. Even Eunuch Pei did not dare to be careless. Waves of the East. The torrential river swept through the world. Ningchen turned his palm and a blue wave rushed to the sky. It was extremely frightening. Eunuch Pei broke the river with one hand. When he was close to Ningchen, frost drifted and thousands of sword chi condensed into one, breaking through the air. With a boom, Eunuch Pei retreated half a step. His palm was dripping with blood. On the other side, Ningchen retreated 30 feet. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth and dyed his clothes red again. Give it your all. I would rather die in your hands than be taken away by God, Ningchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said seriously. As you wish. Eunuch Pei took half a step forward. The aura around his body rose rapidly. An unusually strong pressure swept through the entire palace. It was extremely frightening. Chapter 159. In front of the Heavenly Mandate Palace, flames came from the 9 heavens and fell on Ningchen with the first light of dawn after the darkness. Thunder roared in the clear sky. In the eastern sky, the light of the fire was reflected, forming a shocking scene of burning the sky. The figure below was surrounded by heavenly fire. The snowflakes could no longer drift down, and the ink sword could no longer condense frost. A long, painful cry reverberated between heaven and earth. It was the last song of the man in the fire in the world. In the Weiyang Palace, Zhongsun rushed out of the palace like a madman. The leader of the Imperial Guards did not dare to stop him. He activated his qi and took Zhongsun back to the Heavenly Mandate Palace. At the same time, outside the Imperial City, a beautiful figure in green flew back at an amazing speed. In just one night the Imperial City was settled. No one knew how much the man in the fire had sacrificed for this night. The 3rd prince of the Xia kingdom was not someone who trusted others easily. In the past, no one could guess how Jiming Marquis gained Xia Yanwu's trust. Today, the truth was finally revealed. In the Heavenly Mandate Palace, many officials had turned their heads away and did not want to continue watching. At this moment, no matter how many conspiracies and dissatisfaction there were, they were all burned away by the fire in the sky and scattered with the wind. In the Imperial City, the people who did not know the truth looked at the horrible scene in the sky and were shocked. Someone shouted. It's Jiming Marquis. Jiming Marquis has been punished by heaven. Jiming Marquis has been punished by heaven. More voices sounded. One spread to 10, 10 to 100, and it became the truth in the hearts of the people. Jiming Marquis has done so many evil things that he deserves to be punished by heaven. He deserves to be burned to death. That's right. I heard that the family of the Lord of Ing City was slaughtered by the Minister of Justice. Jiming Marquis is the Minister of Justice. He must be the one who gave the order. Fortunately, heaven has eyes and the evil man finally got his retribution. What nonsense are you talking about? When the Lord of Ing City died, Jiming Marquis was not yet the Minister of Justice. That has something to do with him. Otherwise, why would heaven punish him instead of others? That's right. Such sanctimonious hypocrites should be burned alive. The people were ignorant and believed in rumors. Although there were a few sensible people who refuted, this weak rebuttal was quickly drowned out by the sea of curses. Marquis, is it worth it? In the manner of the Marquis of Jiming, the old housekeeper heard the voices outside and cried. These were the people that the Marquis had sacrificed his life to protect. Was it really worth it? In the imperial palace of the barbarian dynasty, a man clutched her chest. Her pretty face suddenly paled. The connection between their hearts was incomparably clear at this moment. The barbarian emperor stood outside, staring at the terrifying phenomenon in the direction of the Grand Xia royal palace. His eyes narrowed. Which Xiantian lord of Grand Xia was undergoing his heavenly fire tribulation? Why would there be such a huge commotion? Your Majesty, the princess has fainted. At this moment, an anxious voice drifted over. The barbarian king's expression changed greatly, and his silhouette flickered, disappearing from sight. In the princess's courtyard, Wild was lying on the bed. Her face was pale and she was sweating profusely. The barbarian king went up to check but couldn't find anything strange. What's going on? The barbarian king was extremely anxious. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he walked outside and looked at the strange phenomenon in the distance. His heart trembled. It was divine punishment. What had that kid done to provoke the wrath of the heavens? Thunder from the clear sky, heavenly fire descended. The terrifying and shocking phenomenon attracted the attention of the entire world. Everyone looked in the direction of the Grand Xia royal palace in astonishment. In front of the heavenly mandate palace, Zhang Sun and Qing Ning rushed over. They looked at the figure in the flames and felt a sharp pain in their hearts. They rushed over recklessly. Your Highness, no. The ministers were in chaos. The Grand Advisor and Duke Jingwu immediately stepped forward to stop Zhang Sun, not allowing him to take half a step closer. Ha! On the other side, Qing Ning rushed into the flames with her body covered in light. Just as she was about to grab Ning Chen, a huge thunderbolt descended from the sky and sent the people who were blocking divine punishment flying. Pfft! Qing Ning fell to the ground and vomited blood. Her blood stained the ground. Don't come over, ugh! The pain of being burned by the heavenly fire made Ning Chen, who had a heart as strong as stone, tremble. His burning body was like a red lotus blooming in the flames. Scenes from the past quickly flashed through Ning Chen's mind. From entering the palace, to escaping from the palace, to being hunted down by Emperor Xia, and finally to last night's game of chess. His life was very short, but he had done everything he could. It was worth it. It was really worth it. Ning Chen, I won't allow you to die. You can't die. Zhang Sun was blocked by the two dukes and could not move forward. He stretched out his hand weakly and said sadly. Qing Ning staggered to her feet and moved forward again. However, divine punishment would not allow anyone to stop it. Lightning descended and sent the former flying again. Eunuch Pei. Ning Chen said with difficulty. Hearing this request, Eunuch Pei sighed softly. His figure flashed and he pointed at Qing Ning, temporarily restraining her. Thank you. That was the last voice in the flames. The underworld was very far from the imperial city. However, the ghost carriage under the ghost girl was obviously a treasure of the underworld. When rushing at full speed, it was shockingly fast. It was even faster than the average Khanate realm expert. After an hour, the two arrived at the end of the fog forest. The ghost girl made a hand seal and a blurry gate appeared. The two did not hesitate and immediately walked in. The gate of the underworld closed and the heavens disappeared. Prince Yen waved his hand and the 5 swords turned into flowing light and disappeared into the sword rack. "Senior, follow me." The ghost girl got down from the carriage and picked up a red lantern beside her. She walked forward. The road to the underworld was very dark. There was no sunlight here. The only light was the phosphorescence of dead objects. It was very weak and almost invisible. The ghost girl stopped in front of a stone room. She pushed open the stone door and walked in. This was where she lived. Inside the stone room, there were several red lanterns. The ghost girl lit them and then helped Prince Yen put Ning Chen on the bed in the room. After being burned by the heavenly fire, Ning Chen's clothes were still intact. However, the vitality in his body had almost completely withered. In the world, there was no divine medicine that could bring the dead back to life. Prince Yen kept injecting true qi into Ning Chen. However, the effect was not great. The remaining vitality was also quickly dissipating. He could not keep it. The ghost girl stood at the side silently. When the netherworld pearl acted strangely, she rushed over. She did not expect that she would still be too late. In front of the northern Meng camp, Mu Qingxue sent Mingyu back. He looked at the figure in front of the commander's tent and said calmly, "I have repaid the favor that Baron City owes me. Goodbye." "Goodbye." Fan Lingyue nodded and replied. This was the final farewell. They would never meet again. Mu Qingxue turned around and left without any hesitation. "Qing Wuyo, send someone to send His Majesty back to the palace." Fan Lingyue ordered. "Yes." Qing Wuyo bowed and accepted the order. After Qing Wuyo left, Fan Lingyue stood quietly in front of the commander's tent. Her beautiful eyes looked in the direction of the Grand Xia Palace. She could not say whether she was happy or sad. He was indeed a very powerful opponent. If it were her, she would not have been able to handle the situation in Grand Xia better. What a pity. Men. Present. A general quickly walked over and said respectfully, "Order the entire army to head west for 300 miles to Jialing City." Fan Lingyue said. "Yes." The general accepted the order and left quickly. On this day, the northern Meng army moved out, with 10,000 heavy cavalry as the vanguard and 100,000 iron cavalry behind. With lightning speed, they took down Jialing City, which was relatively weak. 8 hours later, the army arrived and completely occupied the city. On this day, many cities in Grand Xia rebelled. The number varied from several hundred to several thousand, all under the banner of the third prince. It was difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. On this day, Grand Xia, which had yet to restore peace, was once again in chaos. They'll be more worried if they see me like this. Ning Chen shook his head. Ghost Girl didn't say anything else. Taking advantage of the night, she left the underworld. Ning Chen sat in the wheelchair and looked at his cracked and rotting right arm silently. This was the only arm he could move, but it was also the part of his body that was rotting the fastest. So this was what it felt like to live a life worse than death. There was a price to pay for living. This was his choice, and he couldn't blame anyone. In the Great Xia Imperial Palace, the black and white impermanence, Oxhead, and Horseface appeared in the gloomy ghost chi. The patrolling Imperial guards wanted to stop them, but they were sent flying by a powerful force. There was no disagreement at all because the ghost lady had no intention of speaking at all. She rushed straight towards the Weiyang Palace. In the Heavenly Mandate Palace, an Imperial guard quickly entered to report. When Xia Mingri heard that it was Ghost Girl, he sighed softly and said, "No need to stop her. Let her go." The ghost sedan drove into Weiyang Palace. Qing Ning was the first to sense it. Her figure flashed and blocked in front of it. "It's you." Qing Ning was shocked and cried out. "This is the letter he gave you." In the ghost sedan, Ghost Girl waved her hand and a stream of light flew out and swept towards Qing Ning. Qing Ning took the letter and hurriedly asked, "How is he?" "Read the letter yourself." As she spoke, the ghost sedan left without any hesitation and disappeared in an instant. Qing Ning opened the letter in her hand. After reading it, tears flowed down unconsciously. Just a few words, extremely simple. "I'm still alive. Don't worry." The familiar handwriting was reflected in their tears. The only sentence he had written was already their greatest consolation. Qing Ning came to Zhang Xuan's room, knocked on the door, and walked in. The room was very dark with only one candle burning. Zhang Sun sat at the table, looking at the moon-shaped jade pendant in her hand. Her eyes were bloodshot and dim. Clearly, she hadn't slept for several days. "Empress, he's still alive." Qing Ning placed the letter in front of Zhang Sun and said softly. Zhang Sun was startled and looked at the handwriting in the letter. After a moment, tears fell like rain. In Barbarian Palace, a man woke up and sat on the bed in a daze. She could feel that he was still alive. Why did her heart still feel so uncomfortable? In the Netherworld Palace, Ghost Girl returned. When she saw Ning Chen's body rotting again, she immediately went forward and absorbed the Netherworld poison into her body. "Don't blame me for talking too much. It's impossible for your body to recover. Moreover, as the poison corrodes, you will gradually lose your self-awareness and become a true living dead." "Ha!" Ning Chen smiled tiredly. "It sounds very scary. If that day really comes, just sink me under the weak water so that I don't scare others." "Give me your hand," Ning Chen said softly after thinking for a while. A look of surprise flashed across Ghost Girl's face, but she still extended her hand. The ghost lady's hands were very white, even whiter than the average woman's. It was not frightening, but rather, it was very beautiful. Ning Chen grabbed the ghost lady's hand and activated the life scroll in his body. Suddenly, a vast aura flowed into his body through the ghost lady's hand. At the same time, Ning Chen's body began to decay, especially his right arm, which was decaying at a shocking speed. Scroll of Life. Ghost Girl was shocked. However, before she could be surprised, she felt a vast amount of true qi flowing into her body. She could only suppress the shock in her heart and concentrate on receiving the true qi from Ning Chen's hand. After a long time, Ning Chen retracted his hand and looked at his arm. He pulled up his sleeve and covered his arm. After a quarter of an hour, the ghost woman woke up. She looked at the young man in front of her with a complicated expression and said, "Recklessly using your true qi will accelerate the spread of the poison in your body." Ning Chen smiled and said carelessly, "It's fine. This cultivation base of mine is just a waste. Why don't I help you break through to the Xiantian realm?" The life scroll did not have any attributes, so anyone could cultivate it. The ghost lady had done him a favor, so this true qi could be considered repaying that favor. Feeling the turbulence in her body, the ghost lady carefully warned, "I have to go into seclusion. I don't think I'll be able to come out for a while. I'll leave the ghost palanquin here. If you want to leave, you can sit on it. But remember to come back before dawn." "Don't worry, I know what to do," Ning Chen replied. The ghost lady did not say anything else and hurriedly left to enter seclusion. The Xiantian realm was not so easy to reach. However, she had a feeling that even if she did not enter the Xiantian realm this time, she would not be too far off. After the ghost lady left, Ning Chen continued to wander around hell. Unknowingly, his originally numb left arm began to feel something. This meant that the yellow spring's poison in his body had deepened. Just as Ning Chen was suffering in the underworld, the outside world was also in chaos. Great Xia and Northern Meng were at war once again. Fan Lingyue led 10,000 heavy cavalry and 100,000 heavy cavalry on a long-distance raid, completely defeating the Great Xia's reinforcements. Even Duke Jingwu was defeated. Less than half of the 100,000 reinforcements remained, and they all retreated back to Yeyang City. The strength of Northern Meng's heavy cavalry was fully displayed this time. In addition to the invincible heavy cavalry, Great Xia's army was defeated again and again, suffering heavy losses. Most of the rebellions had been suppressed, but Great Xia was also in a difficult situation. The people were in a panic, and they no longer had the confidence they had in the past. Within Great Xia's imperial city, there were still many nobles being assassinated. The number of assassins that Northern Meng had hidden with the help of the third prince was far beyond imagination. It was impossible to eliminate them all in a short period of time. The imperial guards of the imperial city underwent a major change, especially the 3 battalions of Divine Wind, Purple Lightning, and Swift Rain. Several commanders were replaced. Marquis Nanyu was also placed under house arrest by Xia Mingri, and his military power was taken back. Half a month later, the 5 battalions of Divine Wind, Green Sparrow, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, and Crimson Viper moved together. The 150,000 Imperial Guards left the Imperial City and headed north to meet the enemy. The 11 battalions of the Imperial Guards were only left with 6 battalions, and the pressure of guarding the Imperial City increased. In the west of Great Xia, the Eternal Night Cult's attacks were even fiercer. The 30,000 heavy cavalry became 50,000. Under the surprise attack, the 100,000 Blackwater army was no match for them and retreated hundreds of miles. In another battle, the Blackwater army was still at a disadvantage. On the other side, the battle between Marquis Kaixuan and the Eternal Night Martial Monarch was earth-shattering. Unfortunately, the Eternal Night Martial Monarch had a special physique and was injured but not killed. Even someone as strong as the Great Xia War God was helpless and could only retreat hundreds of miles. The situation of Great Xia had once again reached a critical moment. In the Heavenly Mandate Palace, Xia Mingri frowned as he looked at the urgent battle reports. His mind was spinning rapidly. That day, Ningchen told him that Great Xia and Northern Meng would definitely fight again. If they couldn't win, they should try their best to drag it out. After autumn, Great Xia would have more than a 90% chance of winning. However, with the current situation, Great Xia probably wouldn't be able to hold on until then. The Northern Meng army came aggressively and bared their fangs. The 100,000 cavalry were invincible, and with the help of 10,000 heavy cavalry, even the Imperial Guards wouldn't be able to stop them. The soldiers of Great Xia were better at defending cities. Hence, Fan Lingyue tried to reduce the number of times they took the initiative to attack the city. He tried his best to choose the open plains to take the initiative. Great Xia couldn't catch the traces of the Northern Meng cavalry, so it wasn't strange for them to lose again and again. The Northern Meng imperial court was a country on horseback. Every Northern Meng person ate sand and mutton as they grew up. The lives of the people of Great Xia were much better as they lived on grains. There was an old saying that a herbivore would never be able to beat a carnivore. The target they chose was out of everyone's expectations. It was not Shilin City but Yeyang City, which had more troops. The scale of the siege was not large, and it was more of a probing attack. Wave after wave, it was continuous. Everyone knew that this was the strategy of the Beimeng military advisor. However, even if they knew that it was a trap, no one dared to let down their guard and could only deal with it carefully. Deep into the night, Duke Jingwu stood on top of Yeyang City, looking at the Beimeng army in the distance. He felt really complicated. He had been in the court for 40 years and had experienced 3 generations of emperors. He had witnessed the entire process of Great Xia going from prosperity to decline. Today, he felt that he was really old. The new generation would replace the old. This era was no longer theirs. Beimeng's military advisor was indeed terrifyingly strong. Great Xia also had such a person, unfortunately. He looked at the teacher who stood up to add oil to the lamp and said respectfully, "Teacher." The headmaster stopped and glanced at Ning Chen. Trembling slightly, he passed the oil in his hand to Ning Chen and said, "You fill it." "I'm old and my hands are not steady." "Yes." Ning Chen nodded. He took the lamp oil, opened the wick, and carefully poured the oil into the lamp. It's good to be young. There's hope when you're young. The headmaster sighed softly. Teacher, I can't hold on any longer. Ning Chen said in a low voice. The headmaster smiled and stretched out his arm. After a while, specks of dust scattered. His entire hand began to turn gray from the fingers. Not long after, more than half of it disappeared. Your body still exists. It's just that there are some problems now. There will always be hope. Don't give up so easily. As he spoke, the headmaster's hand moved slightly. The gray fingers began to fly back and condense together in the blink of an eye. Do you still remember what Dao Kuei said to you? The headmaster asked. Live. Live at all costs. Ning Chen replied. The headmaster nodded and walked behind the desk. He tidied up the books on the desk and said, It's not easy to live. However, there's only hope if you live. Ning Chen was silent. After a long time, he bowed deeply and said, I understand. The no scroll is about to appear. Dao Kuei and I are old and don't have the strength to search for it. We can only rely on you. The headmaster sighed softly. I'll do my best. Ning Chen replied respectfully. At this moment, in the southeast direction, a shocking light shot up into the sky. Suddenly, everyone was shocked. It's the heavenly book. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and said slowly. It felt as vast as the starry sky. The possibility of it being the no scroll was not high. As for which scroll it was hard to tell. Headmaster, I'll go take a look. After speaking, Ning Chen turned his wheelchair and left. After leaving the academy, he drove the ghost palanquin towards the southeast direction of the Xia kingdom. The ghost palanquin was extremely fast. In the darkness of the night, it streaked across with a black brilliance. It was astonishingly fast. This was an important treasure of the underworld. Although its attack power was average, in terms of speed, it surpassed the average Xiantian. Far off in the distance, the flat ground exploded. A giant tomb appeared and split open with a loud bang. Immediately, Yin Qi rushed into the sky and dark clouds gathered. Thunder roared crazily and bolts of lightning more than 3 meters thick hacked down. The surrounding earth was blasted open. The shocking scene shocked everyone in all directions and attracted countless gazes. What an eventful time! Some living fossils woke up from their slumber and sighed. Their eyes could no longer remain calm. Right at this moment, the heaven and earth changed again. 100 li away, scorching yang energy gushed out like a heavenly spring, rushing hundreds of zhang high. Another large tomb exploded, and boundless waves of fire descended. This was the void burning, and it was incomparably spectacular. It was as if the entire sky was burning, and this world was going to be incinerated. The appearance of the yin-yang tombs caused a shocking phenomenon. The people who were constantly coming were hesitant, not knowing which one to enter. The heavenly book was definitely in one of the tombs. If they chose the wrong one, it would mean that they would miss the opportunity to get the heavenly book. Nearly 2 hours later, Ning Chen arrived 50 miles away from the Yin tombs. He stopped the palanquin and stopped. The southeast of the Xia kingdom was the place with the most martial sects and ancient martial families. The appearance of the two tombs attracted the attention of many powers. These sects and families had existed for as long as the Xia kingdom had been established. They had once restrained themselves under the invincible might of the Xia kingdom. Now that the world was in chaos, these sects were much more active. Ning Chen sat on the palanquin and came to a high ground. He looked at the scene in the distance and was not in a hurry to enter. These two tombs looked abnormally dangerous. It was not easy to enter. In front of the two tombs, many important figures of the sects and families gathered. They were carrying treasures of their sects and wanted to force their way into the tombs. Ning Chen looked at the situation in front of him from afar and remained silent. The relationship between the imperial court and Jianghu had always been negative. Now that these sects dared to appear so brazenly, it was clear how chaotic the situation in the Xia kingdom was. Throughout the night, the area within several hundred li of the great screen trembled as if it was about to sink. At dawn, terrifying rays of light rose up from the two great tombs, illuminating the entire sky. Not long after, the supreme elders of the great sects retreated in a sorry state. Their bodies were covered in blood, and their sect-guarding treasures were damaged. They were covered in cracks and had lost their luster. Bang! A waterfall of blood bloomed. Four unlucky Taishang elders were touched by the flames in the Yang tomb. Their bodies suddenly exploded, and their blood and bones scattered all over the sky. Outside the Yin tomb, a similar situation occurred at the same time. Yin mist filled the air, and bloody broken bones floated in the air. It was truly terrifying. The fire waves and Yin mist that filled the sky mercilessly reaped the lives of the intruders. Only 1 or 2 out of 10 people could enter by luck. After more than 10 people's bodies exploded, the crowd calmed down a little and avoided the Yin and Yang aura that was like the god of death. The situation suddenly reached a stalemate. Naturally, it was not difficult for them to defend the perilous situation. There was no problem with Bei Meng's military advisor's strategy. If they couldn't take down Yayang City, it was not something that could be changed by manpower. Great Xia had suffered too much at the hands of the Northern Meng military advisor. Hence, no matter what the situation at Yayang City was, Jingwu Duke and the Marquis of Blood Clothing's strategy was to defend to the death. In the nether underworld, Ning Chen was deep in thought. He wasn't thinking about the Yin Yang tombs, but the war in the north. The tomes of arcane were in the Yin tomb, and no one would be able to get it in a short period of time. They just had to wait patiently. The situation in the north really confused him. When Bei Meng attacked the city, Fan Lingyue's strategy was impeccable. In a situation where the disadvantage was obvious, he was still able to maintain a situation of 6-4. However, he kept feeling that something was wrong. Fan Lingyue's current actions were more like a famous general, and not the world's most intelligent person who struck fear in the world. In other words, it was more than perfect, but not amazing enough. The ghost girl came over and looked at the scribbles on the ground. Although she didn't really understand, she understood what Ning Chen was thinking. You're already like this, and you still can't let go of these things? The ghost girl opened her mouth and asked, very puzzled. She had witnessed the person in front of her turn from a young man in the prime of his life to his current appearance that was neither human nor ghost. If it was anyone else, they would have already collapsed. How would they have the heart to think about these things? Ning Chen casually threw away the withered branch in his hand. He didn't answer and changed the topic, asking, Ghost girl, is your immortal body the same as that of the martial monarch of the Eternal Night cult? Hearing this, the ghost girl shook her head and said, they're not the same. What do you mean? Ning Chen asked. The ghost girl thought for a moment, then said, in this world, there is no true immortal body. Although me, underworld child, and the martial monarch are not afraid of blades, swords, or palms, we can still be injured. Ning Chen listened carefully and didn't interrupt. This might be the key to dealing with the Eternal Night cult in the future, so he had to remember it carefully. The ghost girl continued, for example, underworld child and I have the ghost origin or underworld origin. In addition to our special martial arts, ordinary injuries can be quickly healed. Even fatal injuries such as heart meridians and internal organs can be healed after a period of time as long as we meditate. As for the martial monarch of the Eternal Night cult, because he has an upper and lower dantian, when fighting, he can defend and attack. As long as it's not a fatal injury, with the powerful recovery ability of the 3-disaster realm, he can fight and recover at the same time. The ghost girl's words gave Ning Chen a lot of shock, causing him to once again sink into deep thought. A 3-disaster realm expert with an immortal body was a disaster for the Great Xia. Innate was different from nurture. They couldn't be killed by an army. If the Great Xia wanted to obtain the final victory, how to defeat the martial monarch was an unavoidable problem. Of course, it was still a bit early to think about that. Whether or not the great Xia could defeat Bei Meng was still unknown. Just as Ning Chen was thinking, the ghost girl hesitated for a moment, then said, "Actually, there is another way to solve your body's problem." Ning Chen raised his head, astonishment on his face. He asked, "What way?" "Kill the underworld child and seize the underworld origin," the ghost girl slowly said. Ning Chen was startled, unable to come back to his senses. "If you obtain the underworld origin, you can transform into an underworld body. The poison of the Yellow Springs flower will no longer be a threat. Furthermore, with the underworld origin, your internal organs that have been destroyed by the heavenly flames will quickly recover," the ghost girl explained. Ning Chen came back to his senses and frowned. "Aren't you and the underworld child the same cultivation? Why are you telling me this?" The ghost girl softly sighed. "You don't understand. This generation's underworld child is an anomaly. He has lost his mind and gone crazy. He doesn't have any concept of right or wrong. As long as he feels like it, he can do anything. The reason the underworld has fallen to its current state is largely because of his existence. The most terrifying thing is that this person's talent is too terrifying. Once he crosses the threshold of Xiantian, there will be no one in this world who can keep him in check. It's truly lamentable that fellow cultivators aren't of the same mind." Ning Chen's expression was complicated. The ghost girl continued, "However, once you die, I will still take back the underworld origin. The things of the underworld will still have to return to the underworld." "Of course." Ning Chen nodded. In the next few days, Ning Chen continued to wait outside the Yin Yang tombs every night. Something had also begun to happen to the Yang tomb. Although the people who had entered hadn't died, none of them had been able to leave. They were all trapped inside. "Prepare yourselves. It's time for us to go in." On the fourth night, Ning Chen looked at the two tombs in the distance. Dao Kuei had taught him a secret art from the Taoist path. In the past, the Taoist path had been the master of formations and restrictions. The secret arts he had learned were mainly cultivation techniques. He had only briefly mentioned formations. Wherever the Yin spirits passed by, everything ceased to exist. Everything was devoured cleanly. After countless years, these Yin ghosts seemed to have developed spiritual intelligence. Their dark green eyes actually began to show traces of spirit. This tomb is probably more than 1,000 years old. We might be in trouble. Ghost Woman looked at the departing Yin spirits and reminded them. Yin spirits couldn't be formed in 1,000 years. If they were unlucky, this could be the tomb of an ancient sage from 10,000 years ago. Chapter 164. The recorded history of this world was not very long, at most 10,000 years. The truly glorious era began 1,000 years ago. As for what this world was like 10,000 years ago, only ancient legacies like the underworld, the Tao sect, and the eternal night cult knew. 10,000 years was a long time. Taoism was destroyed, the underworld was defeated, and countless great sects disappeared in the river of time. Not a trace of them was left. Eternal Night sect's strength could only be fully demonstrated at this time. This was a true immortal inheritance with a frightening foundation. Once upon a time, the underworld also controlled the ups and downs of the world. Unfortunately, it declined in the passage of time. The ghost girl carefully observed the surroundings and explained, "It takes a long time for a Yin spirit to form. If I'm not wrong, this tomb is very likely the tomb of an ancient sage from 10,000 years ago." Ning Chen knew very little about what happened 10,000 years ago. The secret technique that Dao Kuei gave him did not mention this. Now that the ghost girl mentioned it, he could not help but be curious. "What's an ancient sage?" Ning Chen asked. "It's a supreme expert who has cultivated to the peak of the three disasters realm. 10,000 years ago, such an existence would appear every 1 or 2,000 years. People called them sages. Later on, the peak of the Three Disasters realm did not appear for a long time, so people called them ancient sages. Now, the peak of the Three Disasters realm has not appeared for 10,000 years. Even this name has gradually been forgotten, the ghost girl answered seriously. Hearing this, Ningchen narrowed his eyes. If this was true, then it was really troublesome. He did not know how powerful a peak of the Three Disasters realm was, but he had experienced the power of the Three Disasters realm. It was not something that could be resisted by humans. Previously, in the Battle of Mijia Mountain, he had used up all his tricks. With the help of the resentment on the blood-veined sword, he had joined hands with Qing Ning, who was in the Khanate realm. In the end, he had used gunpowder and the sand sword lent by Yan Qin Prince to barely suppress the abbot of Du Yi Temple. However, even so, he had not been able to kill this Buddha in the mortal world. A peak of the Three Disasters realm was already so terrifying, let alone a peak of the Three Disasters realm. No wonder no matter how many of the grand elders of the great sects came, they all died. They could not even protect the treasures of their sections. Boom! At this moment, the earth trembled, and the void trembled. The entire tomb shook violently. Obviously, other than them, many great sects and clans had also discovered some clues and began to join forces to attack the Yin tomb. In the next moment, her feet moved. Her figure turned into a white shadow as she slammed her palm down. Boom! The sword and palm collided. Ning Chen only felt a huge force coming from his ink sword. He couldn't dissolve it in time and was immediately pushed back 3 meters. The corner of his mouth was stained with blood. It dripped onto his black clothes. The black clothes and black blood slowly merged together. Ning Chen didn't feel much pain. With his current body, it wouldn't be easy to die even if he wanted to. Oh? Underworld Child touched his lips with his finger. The smile on his handsome face grew wider. It was as if he had seen a prey that made him happy. Yu moved again. Her palm was majestic. She came at him again. The ink sword in Ning Chen's hand hummed. Frost floated. He met it with his sword. With a loud clang, dust flew around the two of them. A crack appeared between the two of them. It extended a few meters. At this moment, a red figure flashed across the battlefield. She appeared in front of the two of them and sent Yu flying with a palm. Are you okay? Ghost Girl asked softly. I'm fine. Ning Chen shook his head. Yu landed on the ground and took 3 steps back. The corner of her mouth was red. Her lifeless eyes didn't have the slightest ripple. It was unknown what she felt. What kind of relationship is this? Friendship? Love? Or is it a stupid favor? Underworld Child smiled lightly. Is there a difference to you? Also, you violated the rules of the underworld again. You're using a living person as a puppet. Ghost Girl said coldly. Underworld Child smiled lightly. Rules are only used by the weak to restrict each other. It's a hypocritical method to prevent the other party from gaining more benefits. Rules have no effect on the strong. Ghost Girl frowned. She glanced at the path they came from. It was a bit strange. It had been so long. Why was there no movement at all? What are you waiting for? Those people who came in. It's a pity that they can't come. Underworld Child said. Ghost Woman's expression changed as she asked, You killed all of them? The weak always have to depend on the strong's mood. Unfortunately, I just happened to be in a bad mood, Underworld Child said indifferently. You're crazy. Ghost Girl suppressed the shock in her heart and mocked. In this world, there's only a fine line between a crazy person and a smart person. But there are too many idiots who think they're smart, and too few who are truly smart. The stupidity of the majority causes the minority to not be recognized. My beloved fellow cultivator, your stupidity makes my heart ache. Underworld Child held his chest with regret. Ning Chen was tired of hearing this. The sword in his hand moved, and a dazzling silver light shot towards Underworld Child's chest. There's no point in saying more. Let's see who's the real deal. As you wish. Underworld Child smiled coldly. He had seen the crude oil residue in Yeyang City before. It was different from the crude oil here. It flowed much better. Obviously, it had been processed simply. It wasn't surprising that Fan Lingyue knew that Yeyang City had crude oil. After all, this wasn't a secret. Furthermore, Yeyang City definitely wasn't the only place with crude oil in Grand Xia. If they sent more people to investigate and inquire, they would surely find something. However, just like what he said, discovering it and using it were two different things. Fan Lingyue discovered it and used it, becoming a calamity for Grand Xia. Although the might of crude oil was far more than that, Fan Lingyue had already used it in the war when no one took it seriously. Ning Chen felt a little helpless. If it was him, without the memories of the later generations, it was very likely that he wouldn't have thought of this step. War had its own knowledge, such as weapons, armors, and catapults. Before seeing the shocking scene of Yuyang City being burned down, who would have thought that this ordinary-looking black water would have such great power? This battle was going to be difficult. Ning Chen sighed. After this defeat, the morale of Grand Xia would definitely fall to the lowest point. Defeat wasn't something that could be broken. What was terrifying was the continuous defeat. Ever since Great Xia and Northern Meng started fighting, Great Xia had never won and had always been defeated. First, it was the crushing defeat at Beizhong Plains. Then, Yangue City was broken. Then, it was the crushing defeat of Marquis Taiping's army. Next, it was Heaven's Gate that was broken. Today, Yeyang City was broken. This time, even the most elite imperial guards of Great Xia were defeated. The soldiers and commoners of Great Xia might very well have the thought that Great Xia might really not be able to defeat Northern Meng. Great Xia really couldn't defeat Northern Meng. This was something that absolutely no one would believe before the start of the war. However, today, not only others, but even the commoners of Great Xia had started to believe this fact. The invincible Great Xia had really become a thing of the past. Everyone had overlooked a fact. Actually, in this battle of defending the city, the Imperial Guards of Great Xia had done well. Apart from being stunned by Northern Meng's sneak attack at the start and suffering heavy casualties, in the battle of defending the city a day later, even without the protection of the city walls, they still showed strong combat strength. In the final battle, Northern Meng lost close to 60,000 soldiers. However, the number of Imperial Guards that died in this battle was less than half of Northern Meng's. Northern Meng had an overwhelming advantage in numbers. Breaking the city was inevitable, and no one could stop them. Unfortunately, Yeyang City was broken into such a pitiful state that no one would notice this fact. Her expression darkened and she no longer spoke. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.